Haven't Seen It with Tim Sestito and Tommy Tevenet. Hello, everybody. Welcome on in. Thank you all so much for listening today. This is a podcast where one of us is watching a movie for the very first time. And today, this is Tommy
Yeah.
missing like a childhood iconic staple of the 90s. And we were literally just talking about before we recorded, like, oh, Mrs. Doubtfire is PG-13. Like, that's
You
odd.
wouldn't expect it.
Because like my parents would not show me PG-13 movies when I was a kid,
Oof.
but I
Yeah.
definitely saw Mrs. Doubtfire when I was a kid. And
Yeah.
you're like on the other end of the spectrum where you're like, yeah, I was watching South Park when I was two, and
Well, this is the difference between being the youngest and being the oldest. You're the oldest, I'm the youngest. So for me, my parents were like, "Oh, fuck it, whatever. We'll just." My dad took me to go see Black Hawk Down when I was in second grade in theaters. That's how different it was for the two of us. But somehow, even though I watched a lot of Robin Williams movies, I mean, I watched Jumanji all the time when I was a kid. Somehow, never got around to Mrs. Doubtfire. I tried watching this twice before, and I passed out not because of the movie, but because I decided to watch at midnight, and was a recipe for me falling asleep.
yeah, and we'll dive more into it. It's more like serious than I remember because you just remember
Yeah.
all like the light whimsical parts as a kid. And some pretty clever jokes in there too that like definitely went over my head as a child. But Tommy, as we always kick it off, well, happy Thanksgiving to everybody. A little bit
Yep.
delayed there. I actually got to see Tommy in the flesh this past weekend. It was very nice to catch
Yeah.
up with him.
We got some
But
nice photos for Instagram.
got some nice photos for Instagram. Is there any movies that you have watched in these past 2 weeks that you'd like to tell
Yeah.
us about?
The week before Thanksgiving, I got to see a double feature. Took the day off from work at PTO, and I did a double feature of the two holiday slashers that just came out. It's a Wonderful Knife with Justin Long and Thanksgiving, the Eli Roth movie. Both were fun. Thanksgiving especially was probably the best movie that Eli Roth has ever done. He's really suited towards that really grindhouse like 80s slasher vibe. And for once, he had characters that weren't extremely grating and annoying, and somehow it worked. So definitely recommend checking it out if you like the slashers.
Nice. Yeah, I've never seen an Eli Roth movie. I've heard they're like violently
You would not
graphic.
like them.
Yeah. Yeah, it probably makes the Evil Dead remake feel like a child's film from from
Yeah.
what I understand. Like there's one with like cannibals on an island and I'm just like
Yeah,
I got no interest, man. I got no interest. Oh,
they're movies that like generally he just does not have a lot of substance on the bones, but this one was fun, and I mean, it just really he's really suited for that. I mean, the Grindhouse trailer was a classic when that came out like 15 years ago,
which
and I'm
one?
glad to. When they did the Grindhouse movie with Quentin Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez had all those fake trailers. One
Mhm.
of the fake trailers was Thanksgiving, so
Oh,
they
really?
finally made that
Oh,
into a
okay,
movie.
gotcha. Oh, okay, so that
Yeah,
he
yeah.
made the fake trailer that Tarantino and Robert Rodriguez made, he just made it into a feature
Well,
film.
he directed the trailer himself, but still,
Yeah.
yeah,
I got you. But
yeah.
yeah, that's funny. Do you know what's an interesting movie choice that I picked recently? It's a movie I don't think I've watched since minimum high school.
Um, Pulp Fiction.
No. It was Spider-Man 2,
Oh, the Tobey Maguire one.
the
Yeah.
Tobey Maguire one. Haven't watched.
Still holds up.
Still holds up great. It's like better than most comic book movies today because it's just like kind of fun and not taking itself seriously and just so stylized and like it's either super dour and depressing or super in like the current engine. It was just a fun like change of pace throwing it up there. Hadn't watched a comic book movie since Guardians 3, I guess, in theaters. Probably the
Yeah.
last one I watched. But I was like stumbling through they're all on Disney Plus. I was like stumbling through them and I was like, huh,
I
yeah,
haven't seen
that's
this one in a while.
I haven't seen this one in a while. I'm gonna throw this one on and it was an enjoyable experience.
It's one thing that's great about Spider-Man 2. I rewatched it when No Way Home came out a couple years ago. And it's just amazing that like, direct Sam Raimi's all over that movie, his directorial style. And you don't
Mhm.
really see that as much in superhero movies these days. I mean, you always hear how like, they tell like the directors like, oh, like don't worry about the action. We'll do the action. You just
Yeah,
focus on
well,
like the dialogue.
that's because they literally use AI and computers to just stage everything out.
Mm.
Because it's got to be a universe. Because even Sam Raimi's MCU movie like has some of his style in there. Like it's in
It's
there.
very Sam Raimi light.
It's like the light version.
Yeah.
It's like a Diet Coke versus a regular. But yeah, it's a great movie. I'm sure most people listening have seen that at one point or another.
Mm.
As is another movie we're covering here is Mrs. Doubtfire.
Look at me right now, Moneypenny. I want to undo that bow and get to know you.
Yes! For an out-of-work actor who wants to be close to his kids,
Could you make me a woman?
I'm so happy. This isn't just a job. It's the role of a lifetime.
God, it's hot in here.
Robin Williams,
First, here's a woman. I'm getting hot flashes.
Mrs. Doubtfire. Back off! Rated PG-13. Starts Wednesday, November 24th at theaters everywhere.
Yeah, so I didn't remember this movie being like this kind of insane, you know? I guess it just
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense when you're like a kid.
Mm.
Because like the movie starts off with him doing like his voices, and I think that's like the highlight of the movie is just you get to hear Robin Williams do his best Blanc, you know, the man of a
Yeah.
thousand voices, just really expressing his range as a performer, comedic performer, and then also honing it in and being like very dramatic and sincere at points, which is like a good uh first step into where he, you know, his career ends up in the late 90s with Good Will Hunting, resulting in him winning an Academy Award.
Mm.
But Tommy, for you, first impressions of Mrs. Doubtfire, what did you think of the film?
I liked it. I thought it was a very charming movie. I expected it to be a little more like funny, I guess.
Yeah,
And there's a good balance. I mean, I think the drama didn't like derail it or anything like that. But I expected, hearing Mrs. Doubtfire over the years, how many people love it. I thought it was going to be like one of the funniest movies I've seen. And maybe my hype was a little bit too much right there. But I mean, Ron Williams in general is just really good. I mean, like you said, that opening scene of him doing the essentially voiceover Mel Blanc thing was great. And like you wish that we had more runs of Ron Williams doing animated voices outside the Genie and like Ferngully, I think, and what is he in Robots. Those are the only things I
yeah.
could think of. He just had such a talent, and like basically this movie is just him practically like ripping a line of coke and then just going off and just going from there. That's how Ron Williams' energy always was.
Yeah, I don't think that's him in this era, but he, you know, really has that like comedy honed
Manic
in,
energy.
that manic energy honed in. Yeah, and like this movie's insane, like because it's been or maybe closer to 20 years since I last saw it, probably more on that side than 10 years, right?
Hmm.
And like, you know, it starts off with him doing the voices, and then he quits because there's a cartoon smoking a cigarette, and he has to take this moral stance, which feels weird because like his character kind of lives in the gray area, if you will,
Yeah.
especially during the dinner scene in the end, and for him to get all
Yeah.
hoity-toity about it, and you're like, oh, okay. Um, and then he picks up the kids from school, and then he's it's like one of the kids' birthdays, and then it's like, we'll have a surprise party even though you got grounded, it's okay, come on. And then
Yeah.
he just invites everybody over and has like live animals running around, and I'm like, this woman's 100% right for divorcing this guy. Are you kidding? You have a horse running around
Yeah.
your house.
It is one of those things that's just like when you're a kid, you're like, oh, like how could Sally Field do all this to Robin Williams or anything? I imagine when like you watch a movie as a kid, and nowadays as an adult, you're like, this guy's just like a jackass. Like, what the fuck is going on here?
Yeah, it's one of those where I was just like, I'm literally watching it, and I'm just like, yeah, like I get it, like I get it. Also, I just like since I've last seen it, like I completely forgot that Sally Field was in it. I completely forgot that
Yeah,
Pierce Brosnan was in it. I was like, whoa, hey! Like I was as surprised as Sally Field one was when Pierce Brosnan walks into the office, and it was very weird. Like I felt like one of the weird things too, like watching it as an adult, was like the relationship between Pierce Brosnan, who plays Stewart, who's like
Hmm.
dating Sally Field, but they were, but it wasn't like super clear if they were doing it as like friends. It was very like non-committal in one way or another. And like there were lines with Mrs. Doubtfire being like, "Oh no, once you divorce your husband, you gotta leave the loins there. Yeah, no, once your husband's gone, that's it." And like the dress scene with the daughters, and she pulls off like a dress, and it's like, oh, that's from like 1976 at my aunt's funeral. I'm not gonna wear this to my birthday dinner.
Yeah.
Uh,
He's just like there's a thin line with this movie where like this movie came out 30 years ago last week at the time of recording, which is why we're covering it. And it's very clear that a movie like this with this premise could easily just like age completely poorly and be like, oh, this is just all dumb jokes. Like I remember I watched that movie Sorority Boys, which is like some stupid like mid 2000s fucking like movie where like guys are like, oh, we're gonna go dress up as girls.
that sounds like a boner movie that was
Yeah,
straight to
literally.
DVD that just had
Yeah.
like 30 seconds of boobs, and like that's how
And
they made their money.
yeah, it was awful. And like I remember watching this, I was just like, Jesus Christ. And like all the jokes just clearly have not aged like well whatsoever. And like there's a creepy undercurrent. And this movie, I'd say for the most part, doesn't really have that creepy undercurrent that some of these like cross-dressing movies can have, you know.
Yeah, and kind of in that Tootsie sense too. I mean, it does and
Mhm.
it doesn't, right? Like it plays it off in this like just childhood whimsical sense of uh Robin Williams is just like he really is just one of like those entertainers that just like age is like fine wine.
Yeah.
And just thankful that you had like a 1 in a million person be able to be put into this position,
Mhm.
um where like you genuinely do believe. I feel like at least in the first 15 minutes of this movie, it's really just setting up that like Daniel Hillard like truly loves his kids, like
Mhm.
not in a creepy way, just in a like he's a father, these are his children, and he would do anything for them. Like you really do get that sense about him, and that his kids feel the same way about him. And he's down, he gets divorced, he quit his job the same day he gets divorced,
Yeah.
and down on his luck, like in a rundown apartment, um and just wanting a way to be able to watch his kids every week.
They, they really depict the divorced dad lifestyle really well, I have to say.
Have you seen those Instagram reels of the guy who opens the divorced dad starter packs? They're so
Yeah.
funny. I gotta send you those where it's just like,
Just
come
like
on, let
shitty
me get the
apartment
house,
or whatever.
let me get the house, let me get the house. Hole in the
Yeah,
wall, but it's a shiny one. But yeah, Robin was it's this weird line where you just go like, there's a point where after Mrs. Doubtfire has really influenced him with and kind of taken over even his personal life, like where he's cooking the kids dinner now. The house is like his apartment's fully clean now, and like Miranda Sally Field walks in and she's like, "Oh, wow, this place looks great. Like this looks fantastic." And it's like, yeah, if you had just like done that and then been like, "Hey, why don't I just watch the kids while you're still working?" She probably would have been like, "Okay, yeah, like this is fine." But like she walks into his apartment at the beginning when they're
it's
eating
just
like old Chinese food, and he's got like Apple computer boxes on his couch and just like leftover boxes everywhere. It was a mess.
is one of those things that like like you said, like he could have easily just been doing that throughout the whole marriage and they would have been fine. But by the end of the movie, I mean, like they obviously don't resolve it. I think that the parents stay separated, but they don't really like make it clear. They don't be like, yeah, I'm still hooking up with Pierce Brosnan or whatever, like fuck off, wrong Williams. But they have like an amicable kind of thing, I think, like
Yeah,
an
they
amicable
definitely,
breakup by the end.
yeah, and that was like literally the message of like the last scene where, because you know,
Mm.
basically the if you've never seen Mrs. Doubtfire, or if you were like myself and had kind of forgotten a good chunk of this movie, um, Robin Williams takes a job just like sending out film reels to different cities at this children's production company, and the owner catches him playing with dinosaurs, and he has a dinner meeting. but also it's Miranda's birthday, and Mrs. Doubtfire is now a big part of the family, and they're
Yeah.
having dinner at the same restaurant at the same time at 7
It's
p.m.
like a
and
classic sitcom setup.
classic sitcom setup, and Robin Williams trying to make both sides work.
Yeah.
And then like you really see his devious side come out where he tries to poison Pierce Brosnan and like put the sauce in the food that he's like allergic to. Like,
Yeah. He's like, oh, don't put pepper. I can't have pepper. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna do that. And he realizes
yeah,
how much he fucks
yeah,
up.
but he starts the movie off by being like, I can't work on this production because of smoking. Although they're at the beginning a really good line of being like, what does the production cast think about no cigarettes? And like they look over and everybody in the booth is smoking. He's like, I got a rigged jury. It's like,
Yeah.
that's clever. That's a line like as a kid would not have gotten whatsoever, but as an adult,
Yeah.
I'm like, that's
Well, it's one of the
well
things that's
done.
great about Ron Williams being the star of this movie compared to like other movies like of this vein, because Ron Williams just improved a crap ton. Apparently, Christopher Columbus, who directed this movie, said that they shot this film with multiple cameras at once, like a documentary, just to capture everyone in the cast, like the reaction to Williams just going off and off and off. Apparently, like he said, Christopher Columbus said in the past that like they Williams improvised so goddamn much that there's a PG cut, there's a PG-13 cut, and there's an R-rated cut. So that's what we need to see. We got the Snyder cut. Let's see the Rob Williams R-rated cut of Mrs. Doubtfire. That'd be fucking hilarious.
That would be funny. But then there's also the what's it called? The an R-rated cut of Mrs. Doubtfire, because like I'm
Yeah.
just baffled this movie's PG-13, to be completely honest with you still at this point. But yeah, I believe that. And then there's the scene when he meets with the appointed clerk for the divorce situation, and it's literally just a cut montage of him improvising jokes at the lady, and then him being like, oh, I guess I'm not funny, you didn't even break once. And I'm like, you just know they just kind of sat back, let the camera roll for roughly an hour or so,
Yeah.
and just like let him do his thing. Like there was just in the script,
It's
it just said Robin improvises this part.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's so many like movies like that where like there's like, oh, like whatever. I remember on Scrubs they said that with the janitor, like his script would be sometimes the janitor would do something funny. And I imagine that's exactly like this movie. It's a shame that we never got Ron Williams to work with like Judd Apatow, for someone who's known heavily for improv, because same thing. Like, apparently, Judd Apatow, he just shoot for hours and hours and hours and just on set, just throw lines and just like, okay, do the scripted version first, then do the like all your improv shit. And if Ron Williams, that would have been a great combo.
I don't know why, and it's just like Judd Apatow movies and Robin Williams movies. Like I don't know. I think Robin Williams is because Judd Apatow movies are typically very ensemble based, and Robin Williams is very much a star. Like he very much just absorbs the screen time, and like I like because it is kind of like, well, why wouldn't they be? It seems like a match made in heaven. But to me, I'm going like, well, maybe he's just like he would just be too big for the style of movies that Judd Apatow makes.
He would have to do like a 1 seat heat check where it's just like a
Yeah,
cameo
it
or
would
something.
have to be a complete like yeah. I was about to say literally it need to be a Robin Williams heat check if anything was
Yeah.
going to happen. But yeah, I don't I don't know why. I just don't like I'm like thinking of Judd Apatow movies, which are some of the funniest movies, ever made, and I'm just like, I don't see him in here. Like
You could see him as like the father of a character or something like that, showing up like when Harold Ramis showed up for a scene and knocked up or something like that.
maybe, but
Yeah.
he's so big and like full of life, and like Apatow movies generally don't like have that like manic bowling ball energy. So like I just wonder if there would just be really like a tonal conflict there. I mean, we'll never really know until some genius has an AI program and it's just like, I made a Robin Williams Judd Apatow movie, and then we all just give our life over to the robots and leave any critical thought to ourselves.
Yeah, it's so funny, like the fucking chuds on Twitter that are like, oh, like I improved this artwork through AI. And it's just like, fuck off. No, you didn't.
Yeah, it's like
so
no.
With Mrs. Doubtfire, how convincing do you think the makeup was? Because you could easily see this go towards like the Arrested Development version when they do the Mrs. Featherbottom.
Yeah, and everybody knows that it's
and like immediately it's like, oh, that's Tobias. Like, well, come on, what are you doing?
yeah, but it's like the house has never been cleaner. But yeah, I it's one of those where the movie's so enjoyable throughout, and you genuinely feel the like compassion of this man with his children, like towards his children, and that it's like a true sense of this character's identity that he's you could pop a bubble in every single movie ever made in terms of like where's the
if you
line.
want to be logic bomb or ever, but.
Yeah, if you wanted to like logic bomb it, I only logic bomb it where it's just when the movies are just like implausible. It's like this is the whole plot of the movie.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
And they set it up with a professional makeup artist like doing it. Like you didn't go to a Halloween store, get a wig and like a little lipstick and show up at the door and everybody was like, no. Everybody's like, oh yeah, you're Mrs. Doubtfire. You don't really look like Dad at all, actually. Now that you say it.
Yeah, and I think like the joke of like Arrested Development was that Tobias didn't put in the extra effort that Ron Williams did.
Oh yeah, 100%. That's like it's literally half the joke.
That's like half the joke. Well, apparently the makeup took like Ron Williams 4 hours a day to apply, and when the movie was like just about to start, Ron Williams went through San Francisco dressed in his full Mrs. Doubtfire makeup and costume, and he went to a sex shop and bought like fucking like a dildo and like adult books or something like that, and no one recognized them. And he's like, "All right, this works. This is fucking great. No one even knew
that's a good
that's a good litmus test.
It's a good litmus test, and it's one of those where, like, because the other thing was like I had forgotten the sequence of when he makes the calls to Miranda to get the job, and he does like 7 different voices beforehand, and that was obviously just just let Robin improv it kind of sequence, because I was just like, isn't Sally Field just gonna realize that like it's her husband just like pranking her at this point? And like then it comes in like, okay, now for the breadwinner here, right? To come in with Mrs. Doubtfire. But yeah, because it's like a very interesting character where she improves both of their lives, right? Like the family's life, and it also improves like Robin Williams' life. Like it puts him in a position where he ends up with a TV show that does become Mrs. Doubtfire. And then also just like in terms of his personal life, like he can cook now, like his apartment's clean, right? Like just doing genuinely better because of her. So it makes it like a very interesting figure of like somebody that really couldn't be real, right? Mrs. Doubtfire becoming like just at least improving somebody. It's like the Don Draper conundrum of like, everybody wants to be Don Draper, but we're all Pete Campbell. But like everybody would love to act and be Mrs. Doubtfire, but not even Mrs. Doubtfire can be Mrs. Doubtfire at all times.
It was just a good balance in general, just showing just like she's not perfect, but as much as she seemed like the super nanny right at the start.
Yeah, do you think that the super nanny producers were just like, what was that movie 10 years ago? Doubt Thunder, something. Miss Doubt Thunder, yeah, with the nanny, yeah. Well, why don't we just find women that are that, and then we just give them the worst children possible?
Oh God, it's a shame to admit that I used to watch that show all the time when I was in like fucking middle school, growing up with my mom. We just watch like all these like random shows of like the Nanny 911, Super Nanny, all the fucking stupid bullshit.
The Nanny 911. Oh, that's like a major throwback that I did not recall that show existing. But yeah, so for you, what was your favorite moment of Robin Williams just kind of being Robin Williams? Like, because there's just a lot of those little sequences in the movie, and we've mentioned a good amount of them, but like what for you kind of stood out in terms of his like improvisational prowess?
I think him just like when he's at the pool of Pierce Brosnan. Pierce Brosnan is great in this movie. I mean, like this is one of his first like big movie roles, because like before he was really known for Rummy and Steel. This is like 2 years before James Bond.
Yeah.
So he just had to play hot, charming guy, and he played that role very well, which is why he got James Bond probably.
He does it. No. Fun fact: they actually wanted him to be James Bond for the Timothy Timothy
Dalton there. Yeah, I forgot about that.
the
Yeah.
Dalton, they wanted to cast him originally then, but he was under contracts for The Living Daylights or one of those.
No, it was Remington Steele. Living Daylights is a Bond film.
Oh
I think
wow, I
Living Daylights.
really why does that sound like a soap opera?
It does sound like a fucking soap opera. I'm pretty sure Living Daylights
Oh,
is
I'm thinking Days of Our Life. I don't watch soap operas. I don't know.
the Living Daylights is the Bond movie that Timothy Dalton starred in.
I
Right
did
there. But
listen,
anyways,
it's not going to come off like that was intentional, but I just want you to know it was 100% intentional. But yeah, like they couldn't get him. They couldn't get him for that. And then both the Timothy Dalton movies like bombed, and then like that was like the longest Bond hiatus until the most recent one because of COVID. And then they kind of refreshed it with GoldenEye, which you've seen that one, right?
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yeah, great game, great show.
Great
anyways,
show.
Or great movie rather. But yeah, anyways, so going back to the scene where like he's at the pool and Ron Williams just going off, just be like, oh, he's a little big right there, or like, oh, like just going off and throwing fruit at him. He's like, oh, it's a run by fruit stand run or something like that.
Yeah, and it's one of those where like Pierce Brosnan's character is very one dimensional, where it's like you like, and it's very weird. Like they typically like they don't really give you a reason to hate him. I guess it's like that little bit where he's like, yeah, the dad's just a loser, and it's like, well, yeah, the dad is kind of a loser in this scenario here.
He's not wrong. You'd
he's
expect like a stupid cliche movie would make it just like that Pierce Brosnan just like some egotistical jackass, and the end of the movie is him and Sally Field getting back together, Ron Williams and Sally Field getting back together, because like, oh, like how could you date like this pretty boy that's just like is shallow and vapid? And no, like this guy's like, yeah, I didn't want kids before, but I'm getting older, and like time to it's either that or I'm alone. So
yeah, and that's a very real life sentence that people say to themselves, and it's not often in these kind of movies. Let me ask you before we move on to the star of the show. I wonder who that's going to be.
Yeah.
What did you think of like Christopher Columbus's direction? Because this is our second Chris Columbus film on this podcast. Do you remember what our first one was?
That was the first episode ever, right? Home Alone 2.
Yeah, don't go listen to it. But
yeah, we were not good back then.
Yeah. So did you feel like he had like any influence on the style of the film, or did you kind of feel like it was a little bit by the numbers in terms of the direction?
I think that when looking back on this film, the directions doesn't stand out almost at all. I mean, like you said, he shot this like documentary style where like just run off the cuff. This is pretty much just a vehicle for Ron Williams, and Christopher Columbus understood that. He understood the assignment. We didn't need a ton of visual touches or anything like that. Instead, roll the camera, let Ron Williams say whatever the fuck he wants, and we'll figure out this movie in the editing bay.
And yeah, and I'm not saying that's a negative against Columbus, because like no. He has his like hallmarks, especially in the Home Alone, and then in some of the early Harry Potter ones. Like they're like those two Harry Potter movies are so distinct from all the other ones. And like I do think Columbus's like biggest trait is like whimsicality. Like I think he just nails that on the head. I think that's what he captures in a lot of his work, and at least the work that I've seen of his. And like it's kind of here, but it's also a little more grounded than some of his other work. But like in terms of a visual sense, there's nothing that like really stands out. But it is very much just like, hey, I know what I got here. Like I don't got to do anything. Like why am I trying to impress anybody? I'm not the star. I'm not the star of this movie. And speaking of the star of this movie, Tommy, speaking of the star of this movie,
I am a star. I'm a star. I'm a star. I'm a star. I am a big, bright, shining star.
Can I just tip my cap to my own transition there, because I felt pretty good. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, that's good right there. Obviously the star of the movie, Ron Williams. I mean, like literally, if we didn't have him in this movie, wouldn't be near as good. I mean, like you couldn't see like someone like Bill Murray doing this, or like other comedic stars.
He's too mean. Yeah, he's too mean. Like Robin Williams has like a genuine wholesomeness to him that just like kind of comes across in most of his work. Where does Mrs. Doubtfire, just as a performance, not the movie, where does it rank amongst Robin Williams characters for you?
I think probably within like the top 10. I mean, like
Yeah,
off the top, yeah. I mean, like
off the top of your
top
head,
five.
it's tough to say because like sometimes where I'm like like I would say he's better in Goodwill Hunting, but like Mrs. Doubtfire is probably like more it's more fun in terms of like a character versus Sean, guy named Sean,
Yeah, yeah. No,
not as fun to say.
well, exactly. Like his all-time, like in terms of voice performance, obviously Genie and stuff like that. And it's great that we got to see him work off those chops too, right here, because he's put on a voice obviously the whole time as Mrs. Doubtfire. So, I mean, I think that's just a great, like, just star vehicle right here. And I don't really know if like we were to like do like a comedy vehicle like this, who would be even able to carry the torch from Rob Williams. I don't think we have a new.
There is no one. I
Yeah,
was literally thinking that when I was watching this, and I was like there like Robin Williams passed away unfortunately 9 years ago, coming up on 10 years. And
yeah,
like
shit.
there's nobody that's even come close to like you'll never be able to replace Robin Williams, but there's ultimately usually somebody that like at least does a pretty good, has similar qualities in him, and like drawing a blank of somebody that could even come remotely close because like you can't make movies like this without a performer like that.
Yeah, that has like a great sense of like humor, improv, and heart. I mean, obviously, like we had the Apatow clan, but like I don't think they have as much heart as Robin Williams ever did. So
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, 100%.
yeah.
Ah, are you ready, comedy partner? Waka waka.
All right. Now, Tommy, I want you to hear me out because I'm kind of formulating this in my brain right now, and it's probably bad, but just let me go with it here. Because the easy choice is going, well, you just replace everybody else with Muppets and even Robin Williams, but then when he puts on Mrs. Doubtfire, it's just him in the suit, right? No, there's only one Muppet in this movie, and it's Fozzie Bear when when it's Mrs. Doubtfire. Uh, and I don't know why, and maybe it's just because like he's like a hack comic as a Muppet, and that's like what he's born to do. Like and this is his performance of a lifetime. Like I want to see it. Like I don't know why that's the version of this movie in a Muppet adaptation form that I want to see, but that's the one I want to see, and I'm curious your thoughts on that because this thought came to
Yeah.
me as I was preparing to hit this button.
I mean, like I think when we go into the Muppet version, I mean, like this movie did have literally a puppet at one point.
It did
When
towards the end, yeah.
towards the end when he was on the kids show and stuff like that. So, I mean, Rob Williams himself. I mean, I'm really looking at a picture of him with the Muppets. I mean, I think you could make a version of this movie where it's just Miss Piggy as Mrs. Doubtfire. I mean, that's the obvious choice right there.
Not as fun.
um,
No, not as fun.
what
Like it needs to be Fozzie. I don't know why it does. Maybe it's because Robin Williams is so hairy. But like it needs to be, and I don't know why. It's not the version a producer would go with, but it's the one that I want right now.
we just need a remake right there. Because Fozzie just like down on his luck would be fucking hilarious too. Just like a rink a dink
That's
apartment.
pretty much like Fozzie in every Muppets iteration, just kind of down on his luck comic. Would be a good transition. So Tommy, review time. Give me your score to 5.
So this is a fun little charming movie. I'm glad I finally saw it. I thought it was going to be a little funnier, given Ron Williams' stature, but overall, I mean, his heart is felt throughout this movie. I'm going to go 3.5 out of 5. Very fun watch. Glad to watch it, but I think the humor could have been kicked up maybe a little notch.
Yeah, I'm gonna go 3 out of 5 here. Like I enjoyed it, and it's a Robin Williams vehicle. Like Sally Field, Pierce Brosnan, good performances, but they're all the other characters are very one dimensional in this. Like it's the Robin Williams show, and they know what it is. It has some clever quips in it. It's a fun movie. If you have kids and they haven't seen it, this is a nice one to put on a Tuesday evening before they run off to bed, scamper off to bed, because it's fun, and it's definitely something that I can't picture any child not enjoying this movie. Like they will enjoy this. And it's one of those great Robin Williams performances that we were blessed with during his career. So 3 out of 5 for me, 3.5 out of 5 for Tommy. any final thoughts before we wrap up this episode, Tommy?
Yeah, so thank you guys so much for listening. You can follow us at Seen It Pod. That's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and very occasionally Threads. Still get a shout out.
When's the last time you posted on Threads?
I think 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago.
It's expired. It's expired.
It's expired at this point.
It's
I mean, granted, I haven't posted on TikTok in a while either. But
but TikTok's at least relevant still. Like
Yeah.
we have this spat at the end of every single episode where and I know you're just doing it now because like
it's a bit. It's a bit at this point.
It's a bit at this point, but it's just like because I started it the first time. You're like, and we're on Threads. I'm like, why are we on Threads? Who cares? So yeah. If you're on there for some reason, just get off the platform. Don't support Mark Zuckerberg. We like the metaverse kind of been a flop. The Threads a flop. Like I'm here for Zuckerberg failures. You've seen The Social Network, right?
Yeah, of course.
Damn.
But on a Fincher kick recently. So.
I know you have. But I don't know why I have a memory of seeing this in the theaters. With you. I don't know if that's true, but I just feel like you were there.
I know I saw it in the theaters. I don't know who I saw it with though.
I don't know why. I just feel like it was you, and I'm just gonna say it is. But we're finalizing our holiday schedule. We will.
Yeah, we're gonna be covering Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I know we have that on the docket.
We have confirmed Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. We had that.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. Yeah, we have Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. We might be doing another episode of It's a Wonderful Life because upstairs Steve hasn't seen it, but we'll see there. So.
Yeah, no, we're doing it. It's not a like maybe we're doing it. It's like a no.
It's like we are doing. Well, we got to do the Muppet version.
There is no Muppet version, which is
there
weird,
is.
Is there?
There is. It's there's a version of like the Muppets where like there's like Muppet Christmas special where it's Kermit says like what life would be like if I wasn't ever born, and then throughout the movie they don't show the Twin Towers, and then in the flashback sequence they show the Twin Towers. So did Kermit call 9/11? You be the judge.
I don't know if this is real or if
this is a real thing. I'm not joking.
If this is real or if you're just like trolling me really
I'm
hard
not trolling.
Right
Literally,
because at first I was like, okay, that makes sense. Like the story's public domain, like there's no rights issues, and then you're like, yeah, and then Kermit flies by in one shot. There's the Twin Towers, and then the other, and then you're 9/11 bombing me, and I'm just like, what is this, Tommy?
I'm not kidding. There's literally a scene where it's just like throughout the movie before like he like wishes he's not born. You can see that you don't see the Twin Tower, or you see whatever it is, but you fucking don't see the Twin Towers. And then when he is born, you see him. When he's not born, you see him. I'll show you the reel. I'll show the reel. I'm blowing your mind.
No, you're not blowing my mind. I'm on edge right now because I just think you're messing with me. To be completely honest with you, I think you're trolling me right now. With this
no, I'm not trolling you. Let me see if I can find the YouTube clip because I saw this on Instagram the other day. It was just like Kermit.
All right, people. All right, now.
Anyways, this is the whole thing. Yeah.
This is devolved to the point of I think Tommy's trolling me. But thank you all so much for listening. This week we will see you next time.